The Majority Report's Sam Seder recently agreed to participate in something pretty bizarre. Surrounded by 20 American conservatives, he took part in a 90-minute debate against all of them. The event was structured around Seder making 4 claims about the Trump administration, with the young conservatives, and they were all really, really young, taking him on. And they really did not self-censor. This was one responding to Seder's claim that unless you're a billionaire, a religious fundamentalist, or a xenophobic nationalist, voting for Trump was a mistake.
What's the problem with xenophobic nationalism? Don't you think that's better for Americans in general?
To be xenophobic nationalism is better?
We should have a coherent culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture. We should have assimilation.
Which, do you get to choose what the culture is?
We already have a dominant culture.
What is the dominant culture?
Based on European and Christian values and identity. That is the dominant culture.
White Christian,
it's rooted in European identity.
White. So your argument is that
has been the dominant culture.
Just to be clear.
And we're not letting people assimilate to that. We're saying you should keep your culture, and this is why our culture is so divided.
Your argument is that Trump is good for those who want a dominant white European culture.
I mean, that is what America is. It's rooted in European identity and Christian values. That's what it has been. Would you really disagree with that? What is it then, if that's not the identity of America?
Well, I think the identity of America...
For the majority of time, America's been a country. You don't think that's been the identity?
Well, actually, no. I think actually the identity of America has been, for better or for worse, a melting pot in that regard.
Yeah, maybe since like the 1960s. Even then, even we had this idea of a melting pot literally means assimilation too. It means melting. It means you're assimilating to the dominant culture. Is that not what melting means?
No, it doesn't
and
mean
now
that
instead we're saying there's something wrong with xenophobia.
Dominant culture. No. I mean, look, I got to be honest with you, you and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. It's a choice. And I think what you're expressing, though, is really what the Trump movement at its heart is about. And I think that's problematic.
I disagree. I don't think Trump's anywhere close to being a Christian nationalist. That's ridiculous. Trump's basically a Democrat from 15 years ago when it comes to social issues.
So you don't think that he's conservative enough for you?
Oh, definitely. Nowhere close. No.
He's not xenophobic enough for you?
No, he's trying to import a bunch of H-1Bs. Are you kidding?
Right. Oh, so you want to get them out too? Yeah. No, I think you're making my argument for me.
Wow. Just fully embracing xenophobic nationalism. It's the political position of 2025, apparently, if you're white and very, very blonde. Another of Seder's claims was that Trump's attack on DEI hides his real goal, which is to give corporations more power. Here's how another of the conservatives responded.
If you were racist, right, and you were an employer, and if you wanted to absolutely be racist and exercise that, you would. I think DEI sort of prevents people from seeing the reality. If a person truly wanted to hire you based on your intellect, based on your skill set, they would. DEI essentially provides tax cuts. For the end of the year, when you create your tax returns, they give you a tax credit for hiring someone who is Black or a person of color. I don't know if you knew that.
In these agencies?
In agencies and private
in government
businesses.
Agencies, they don't get tax cuts for hiring people of color.
And the other thing I wanted
this is to protect people from discrimination.
The other thing I want to kind of state here is that I've realized that a lot of the times with the liberals is that you guys push for example, for DEI and people of Latino or Hispanic descent. And a lot of the times what you don't realize is you're actually doing more harm than good by putting them in positions where you make them believe that it's based on the color of their skin. It's based on...
DEIA is not
It's based on merit. DEI emphasizes color, skin color, physical attributes.
It says that the people who work in your agency, it's about anti-discrimination.
Discrimination against what?
Against people who may have different cultural mores, may have different...
But that's irrelevant to a job, right? It should be based on merit. And that is the emphasis here.
People get hired as a merit, but if the DEI, I'm talking about Trump's rescission of these orders on these agencies.
If you received a tax cut as an employer, wouldn't you hire a person of color?
Dude,
if you could pay them less?
Listen, we're talking about government agencies that do not get tax cuts. Government agencies...
They don't.
No.
Yes, they do. They absolutely do.
I'm talking about
Every
parts
private and public sector gets tax cuts when you hire a person of color.
Government agencies don't pay taxes. Government agencies are funded by the government.
That is not true. That is not true. And you know what? I think the whole juxtapose of this entire conversation.
What month is this?
This is January.
Okay, so we can agree on that.
No more tax breaks for government departments. Let's tax their profits and their shareholders. These are the people who literally want to take apart the Department of Education in the US. Helena, I don't really want to talk about their arguments, but what I am interested in is how young they are and how kind of trendy they look. What is it with this new conservatism with its sort of, I don't know, attractive influencer veneer?
What's interesting is that previously, I touched on this a bit last week, and I'll touch on it again here, that in the 2015, 2016 era, the Conservatives prided themselves on the facts over feelings, right? The facts don't care about your feelings was the refrain of Ben Shapiro for a very, very long time, right? And these people can't even get basic facts right. I'll touch on one of the arguments that was made there, which is this idea that there's this European culture that underpins America. And I'm like, what unified European culture? What? Somehow, especially amongst American neo-Nazis, they will try and make it seem like the Europe is a white entity that they just come from because they have no connection to it. They're born in America, they're raised in America. They don't have any connections to Europe at all other than the lineage of their parents. They don't understand because they've never been. Serbia has a different culture from Austria, which has a different culture from Spain, which has a different culture from Norway, from the UK, from Ireland, right? The idea that any of this is kind of monolithic at all is quite frankly insane. It's insane that you'd think that. And the reason you get to a point of not thinking that is because the public education in America is bad. Why do you think the Republicans want to defund public education? It's so that these people don't end up getting an actual holistic understanding of history more broadly, and they can get propagandized to by American media outlets, right? And anti-intellectualism underpins a lot of the mainstream radical right at the moment, right? The radical right that's a large part of American politics, and it's kind of growing in UK politics, but to a lesser extent, right? Anti-empiricism, in fact, a lot of their viewpoints, a lot of conservative viewpoints, disagree so much with the scientific consensus nowadays, disagrees with a lot of kind of historical consensus nowadays as well. And because they can't run on facts don't care about your feelings anymore because of that disconnect between, basic reality and the things that they believe, they have come to distrust basically all institutions, scientific and educational institutions, as rote because it doesn't reconfirm their priors a lot of the time. And the anti-intellectual tradition is being preyed upon by influencers to try and attract a fan base. And unless you have an empirical basis for the things that you believe, it'll end up turning into a cult mentality where people will refuse to hear reason. They will refuse to hear rebuttings of the things that they say that are total nonsense, like government agencies getting tax cuts when they are literally being funded by taxation. These are things that are impossible to argue against because it's just a basic fact of reality. You're living in totally different realities, right? You'll show Trump supporters the evidence that Doge hasn't cut funding for transgender mice. They have cut funding for experiments that use mice, or transgenic mice, they're to use as a testing body for some kind of hormone replacement therapy or other type thing, and unless you can get them to engage with basic facts, they're not going to get out of that little bubble that they've been put in. And this can affect young people who are very, very online just as much as the elderly as well. I mean, it's interesting. The millennials are actually more left-wing in both the UK and in the US than Zoomers are in both those countries. But I think it's more pronounced in America than it is over here, where young people are more left-wing than they are there. But especially in America, the digital natives of the millennials, they've kind of been able to scrutinize the information that they've received from the internet because they grew up throughout the establishment of the internet being part of their daily lives. Where a bunch of Zoomers who came into it, who've only ever known the internet, aren't as critical with the sources that they receive and the propaganda that they're told. And so they're very easy to recruit into this anti-intellectual radical sphere that's been created by Trumpism.